Well, this was week 2 of the something like everybody's Critic movie challenge. So, watching a horror movie every week with different prompts. The prompts for this week was classic horror, which a lot of these are pretty vague. Some are oddly specific, but this one I decided to watch the 1960 classic Psycho. And I watched it because this was it was either the first horror movie I ever saw or the second horror movie I ever saw. I believe it was the first horror movie I ever watched. And I had not watched it in over 20 years, like all the way through. So I decided it was due for a rewatch to see if I still loved it as much as I did before. And I did. I absolutely love this movie. It is so well done. There's so much to it. I really can't talk about too much. Obviously, there are spoilers when I talk about this movie. So, and I think this is one of those movies that a lot of people, even if you haven't seen the movie, you feel like you have, because there are aspects of this movie that are so ingrained in our culture and so ubiquitous that we've just integrated them without having to know even the movie itself specifically. So someone would be likely to compare somebody to Norman Bates because he's now an archetype for a character, or there's lots of references, lots of quotes, and this was the first movie that actually killed the protagonist halfway through, which was very shocking. It was a huge change, and other movies have since done it, but this was the first one that really went out and did something that different. And it's so interesting. It captivates you. The acting's really good. There's just so much to this movie, and I like that even though you feel for Marion, she also did something wrong. She stole $40,000, which in today's money, I believe would be around $400,000. So she made off with quite a lot of money that this guy was buying a house with, and that's pretty sad and pretty messed up. So the other thing I really think that I find interesting about this movie is the portrayal of mental illness. They kind of try to sell it as dissociative identity disorder, but it doesn't actually really fit the criteria for that, because often with dissociative identity disorder, the personalities are created as a protective mechanism to protect the person due to trauma, and they're all aspects of the person's personality. And this is more that, I think, because of regret, because of missing her and all these things, he decided to create the character of the mother for himself, and then he kind of got lost in the difference between fantasy and reality and became the mother eventually. But that was always a cool reveal to me. I always thought it was really neat the way it was done. I also do want to say, I think it goes without saying, but I will say it anyway, that a lot of movies, the portrayal of mental health and mental illness, they portray people with mental illness as scary or dangerous, and most people that are dealing with mental illness are not dangerous. So even though it makes a good story device in this case, because it's something interesting, it fascinates you, you're like, the way the brain can operate can be very interesting and can lead to things like murder. It's realistic in that sense, but also it would be nice if there were other portrayals of mental illness more popularized, rather than just someone is, the antagonist has some kind of mental illness. But that's a soapbox for a different day. But I did want to say I really, really enjoyed watching this movie again. It was really fun for me to sit and rewatch and relive the experience and see if I still did love it just as much as I did the first time. So I'm looking forward to next week.